and conclude today. The second letter. This second letter is written to the Alter Rebbe's followers after his release from prison. All good Chabad rabbis went to prison. I went to prison also to visit the inmates, but Chabad rabbis rather, went to prison as inmates. The Alter Rebbe was slandered by those who opposed his teachings. Jews, committed religious Jews. I don't know if that call that a religious act, whatever you want to call it. And he was released from prison after 53 days, and hence we have 53 chapters of, I don't know, hence, but correlates with 53 chapters of Tanya, the first part of Tanya. We're in the fourth part. And that was a nod of approval from the government that everything he was doing was kosher and it wasn't a problem. So actually, more importantly, it was a nod of approval from heaven, as there was a heavenly decree, as was told to the Alter Rebbe, about his teachings. And the fact that he was released meant that his teachings now could be further disseminated, and even more so disseminated than ever before. What was the decree? Something novel in his teachings. It's called Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And it's not about wisdom of ways of the world or wisdom of Torah. It is wisdom of Torah. I shouldn't say it's not, but more specifically, it's about the knowledge of God, to know God. Until then, the relationship to God was really more faith-based, more from faith to bringing to the love and awe of God. But to know God, there are many Hasidic Rebbes even that were against the teachings at the time, that only the few can engage in such profound and deep teachings, and not the masses. And the Alter Rebbe thought, maybe being imprisoned, that this is a heavenly decree. Well, not thought, that he was told by the Baal Shem Tov and the Mesicher Maggid who came to him that it is a decree. So he said, okay, maybe I shouldn't be teaching. He said, no, you'll be released, and you have to disseminate even more so than ever before. So this is called After Petersburg 2. And the sons of the Alter Rebbe, when they put the letter 2 for the second letter, the second epistle, they put upon his arrival from Petersburg, letter number 2, to signify this idea that it's the second wave, or it's second wave is not a good idea because it's comes negative connotations there. It's the second leg of the dissemination of Hasidic teachings that would be even greater than before. So that's the background. It begins with a verse from Bereshis, from Genesis, from Jacob, our forefather, Yaakov Avinu. He says, "Ketonti mikola chasadim mikola emes." I have become small from all of the favors and of all of the truth. This is Yaakov meeting his brother Esav after 22 years of being separated, after he had taken, rightfully so, his Esav's firstborn blessings that he sold off to him. And now they're going to be meeting. And he says, I have become small. Ketonti, those words, Ketonti, I have become small. What does that mean? I have become small. So there's, Rashi and the Ramban, they have different ways of understanding that. Now that Rebbe says that I have become small, literally is referring not to his merits, not to him being humble, or taking it in a humble way, but because of the kindnesses of God that he has bestowed, I become very humble, very small. So Alter Rebbe explains, what does that mean? Why? Because of kindnesses that God does, that should make you feel humble, make you feel small. Think about it for a moment. It should make you feel like, wow, great. Look what God has done for me. And it's quite the opposite. And we'll see. So he explains. So God's chesed is the right arm. And he embraces us. When we do a mitzvah, when we do good, his right arm embraces, right? Meaning that when you do, when God is bringing you close, he's bringing you close, more intensely close to him. What does that mean? It should make you more humble, the Alter Rebbe says, because you're closer to God. So instead of seeing your own virtues that God brought you close, you see the greatness of God to such a degree that the closer you get, all that is before him is considered as nothing. Because after all, there is only but the presence, and the only reality is God. So the closer you get, right, the more humble you become. That happens with great people, by the way. It doesn't happen with regular people like you and I. The closer we get, from afar, she looks amazing. They get close, maybe not so, right? From afar, he is wow. Then you get close and you see the character. Not so great. In other words, the closer you get to a person, the more you see what's inside of them. The more you see that, from afar they look great, but close up, usually that's human condition. Here, the closer you get to God, though, well, the greater and more perfect he is. Now, I personally have had that kind of experience, shall we say, and that's with the Rebbe. Great people, the closer you become, or the more humble you become. Not that you feel that they brought you close and therefore, wow, you must be significant because they brought you close. God is bringing you close to him. You must be significant. When you stand before greatness, you don't sense your greatness, you sense the other person's greatness. So when you stand before God and he's doing you kindnesses, which means he's embracing you through his kindnesses, his open, revealed kindnesses to you, what that does is make you self-effacing. It makes you sense the greatness of God. Right? And therefore, the more closer you are, the more you feel your nothingness, not your somethingness. And this is exactly the self-effacing response of favors that is embodied by Abraham. Avram Avinu said about himself that I am dust and ashes. What do you mean he's dust and ashes? In other words, even though he was the embodiment of kindness, he reflected divine kindness down here in this world. So he's a true reflection of God's kindness. Yet, he considered himself dust and ashes, relative and compared to God's kindnesses. He was nothing. No, incomparable. And this is the humility that's born of the kindness that is characteristic of the trait of Yaakov, of Jacob, who first made reference to. That, and with this we can understand why he was justified for the fear that he had that he was going to meet up with Esav, his brother. Even though God promised to Yaakov that I am with you and I shall protect you. But Yaakov regarded himself as, in a humble way, that the multitude of God's favors made him unfit and unworthy that he should be saved. Because God did so much. So it didn't make him feel, oh, I am so much, because look what God's done for me. No. Because of the humility of all of that, felt that, wow, I'm utterly unfit and unworthy. It's the opposite. Again, if the kindness makes you feel, it makes you sense the greatness of the other, so then you don't feel that I'm worthy of what you're getting. Therefore, why should I be getting more kindness? And that's how he felt about the kindnesses that he had received from God, so many. This is different, the Alter Rebbe says, that's holy people, and that's a holy way. What's the unholy way? There's also an attribute of kindness that belongs to the other side, Sitra Acher, and it personifies itself in the idea of Chesed of Klipa. Chesed of Klipa is like Ishmael. Ishmael is the son of Abraham, of Abraham. And when he was shown kindness, he just grew more full of pride and arrogance and self-satisfaction. Right? Rather than humility, he had pride. Look how special I am. Right? Look how special I am. So that's the teachings. Now he takes the Alter Rebbe, this next part of the letter that he writes to his followers. He says, accordingly, the Alter Rebbe says, I'm making a very strong and weighty announcement to the Hasidic fraternity regarding the multitude of favors that God has done with us in his release from prison. Alter Rebbe saw it as such a kindness of God. Not something that he was owed. Says that as a result, we should hold on to this attribute of Yaakov Avinu, right? And we should, and we shouldn't feel deserved. We should feel like, it says the remnants of his people. I'm not like don't feel your importance. Feel your lack of importance. Who says you're indispensable? Maybe you're dispensable even. So he's saying that that's the humility that we need to have. And therefore, he says, in very strong terms, no one should be haughty in their relationship to their brethren. And in reference here, he means to fellow Jews who did terrible things against the Alter Rebbe and the community, to the opponents that caused the arrest of the Alter Rebbe. He says, don't jeer them. Heaven forfend. Strict warning, he says. Hold your peace. Say nothing. Bite your tongue. I said that. What should you do? Subdue the spirit and the heart with the attribute of Yaakov, of this humility, that you don't feel deserved, and you just feel the great blessings that have been bestowed, and therefore you're not, full of yourself and haughty as a result. And he says, with this humility and a soft answers it, will turn away anger of our opponents, and with that restrained spirit, he says, perhaps God will put something into their hearts, a loving response to our brethren, because we've reflected that to them. We have, as water reflects one's face, so does the heart of one man reflect the heart of another. And with that, he concludes this letter. Wow. Extremely powerful. Let's unpack this a bit. Let's make it also relevant to us. Although I think a lot of it just is very clearly relevant for our lives. What happens? Think about it. We have to be honest with ourselves. When someone bestows a something upon us, and maybe it was coming to us even. What's our attitude? What's usually the attitude? I deserve it. I deserve it. It's coming to me. I deserve it. Um, and that brings you to a place of feeling yourself and your significance. And from there, it becomes a very quick path, a slippery slope to being full of pride and haughty. That's klipa. Someone does you a favor, even, or not a favor. There's something that maybe is even coming to you, but here, it was coming to Yaakov that God said, I promise I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to protect you. But he doesn't feel deserve it. God has done so much. So he has this sense of humility that I'm not deserving. It's not coming to me. And therefore, the amazing thing is with that humility, you can now respond to another person as he did to Esau when Esau came. He bows to him. He shows him great honor. And he's turned around from an opponent who ultimately embraces him. So in our lives, right, we get favors done, things done, and sometimes just the fact that we get something, we feel really good about ourselves because we got something. You know, as the advertising says, and when you get it for free, free feels good, right? Free feels good. Yep. Definitely makes the Yetzer Hara animal soul feel good. The animal soul wants freebies. It wants to feel good. It wants to feel significant, important, right? I might say, well, where's the self-esteem over here? Where, come on, self-esteem. You gotta feel. Well, self-esteem isn't about you. It's because you got something that makes you feel good about yourself. That's not self-esteem. That's actually a low self-esteem. You need something to make you feel good and significant because someone gave you, right? Someone gave you something that made you. That's really low self-esteem. Real self-esteem is you recognize who you are. You're a Jew. You got a godly soul. You're a non-Jew created in the image of God. So your significance and your esteem is not coming from because I got something, or even if I accomplish something, even my accomplishments, self-esteem, because you accomplished today, tomorrow you don't want to accomplish. What happened? Self-esteem out the window. I didn't accomplish, and that's the world we're living because it's really confused. Self-esteem is coming. Self-esteem is coming from who you are. So Avraham Avinu is so secure in who he is that even though he's the embodiment of kindness, he's dust and ashes, he considers himself. Not who he is as a representative of God, but in his accomplishments, in his kindness. Yaakov, he doesn't feel that it's owed to him because God promised to him, but God has done so much. And he feels so close. And that closeness doesn't bring, familiarity breeds contempt, right? Like it does with a regular person. Not with a tzaddik, it doesn't. And definitely not with God. The closer you are, the more you feel your insignificance and the greatness of the one who gave. So, in a human way, when someone gives you something, whatever it is, out of a real sense of humility, you feel their greatness and not, wow, look what I got. No, look who they are. So great. They're so nice. They're so wonderful. I think we do that often. I'm sure we do. But this takes it to another level of truly feeling your insignificance and their significance, just as God is the true significance. And the closer we get, we feel that insignificance. So even with other people, we can and we should be that kind of appreciation, that kind of realization. On the other hand, Klipa, Yishmael, the more he got, the more it fed him, the more it made him feeding and filling him a greater significance, which means coming to greater pride and arrogance as a result. And the Alter Rebbe is saying this to his Chassidim. Think about it, that I'm talking about people who did really a horrific thing, like slander against the Alter Rebbe. It gets imprisoned for 53 days. We're talking about under the Tsar of Russia. Well, it's not exactly, not that any prison is a good place to be, but and hold back. Why? Even and now we're talking about to the enemy, to have enemy. I mean opponents. I shouldn't call them enemy. Amalek is an enemy. Anti-Semites are an enemy. But these fellow Jews who are really lost and confused, they're opponents, but not enemies. So to be able to hold yourself to somebody who, did you wrong, and to be able to bite your tongue, and to even through humility to be able to deal with them in an appropriate way. And I'm not talking about your enemy here, right? We're not talking about, a Nazi, Yimach Shemam, that kind of person. No, you don't show to them, that this form of humility. But to a loved one, start there. That is opposing us. If we recognize, if we have the humility based on the fact that we have a closeness to God, then we'll be able to deal with that person in a very different way. A very different way. And again, someone who's opposing a loved one. Let's leave it with loved ones right now as opposed to anything else. Yeah. All right, let's open this up. Questions, comments, thoughts. I know now that. Anybody have a question? 2 question marks before you ask a question. 1 second, Michael.
Hello.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Shalom. I'm really good. How about you?
Thank God, doing well. Yes, thank you. What's doing? Any thoughts?
What?
Please share your thoughts.
Of course. So, Rabbi, I'm really honored to actually take part in your Tanya class. I've been joining your Tanya class. I've been, having a more cheerful and much better perspective upon life, and I've been feeling better myself. So thank you for preaching. At least I feel my soul getting blessed with every single knowledge that I get from you, every single piece of knowledge I get from you.
Wonderful.
But the title of the room got me thinking. After imprisonment, we're talking about imprisonment. Say I do something bad, and I get arrested for it. Right. Me doing prison, does that count as me doing tshuva?
No. Why would that be? Tshuva is something that is a resolve that you make. Tshuva means to return to Hashem. So if you did something wrong, and you own it and have regret for what you have done, and will not do it again, and won't do it again, that's tshuva. So whether you're in prison or not, tshuva, if for anything that we've done, needs to be done. Now, prison is on top of that tshuva is bringing pain to us. You know, we're pained by being in prison. You know, it's not a place where a person wants to be. So that adds to the cleansing process of tshuva, but it is not tshuva. That's not tshuva. Tshuva is something we do that we have to engage in.
I understand, because I watched a video online of Rabbi Manus Friedman. I think you know him or heard of him at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he said that if you're in prison, you're doing tshuva. And I kind of got confused by it, because I thought, just like you said, tshuva is us regretting for something we did, and returning back to God, regretting that we did it in front of Him, and we apologize for doing it in front of Him.
So I haven't heard what he said, but I would assume that he means that, that the idea of prison, not necessarily, the ideal of prison is that it helps a person to do tshuva. That's the ideal of it. That doesn't mean necessarily that a person has done, but as an ideal, yes, that's the the idea. We see that, for example, biblically there really isn't a concept of prison, and if you look in the Torah, there isn't a concept of prison, but there is a concept of isolation. So if someone became impure through through leprosy, right? And leprosy was a skin disease, skin deep only, that came as a result of speaking ill back in biblical times. You spoke ill, and you had to be removed from the community and be in isolation outside of the community. So, and the whole point of that isolation was in order that you should, think about what you did, about how you spoke ill, slander. Actually, look at the tie-in over here. Didn't even realize, right? You spoke slanderous, and because of that, now there's a physical manifestation of that, of the slander on having tsaras, as it's called, and now you need to be isolated. What is the point of that? Is that you should realize what you did is try to separate people from people. Now you need to be separated in order to know that through speaking slander, what you have caused, and do tshuva. So absolutely, that's the ideal, but that doesn't mean that's what it in fact is. So that's probably what he meant. Is that clear?
Okay, thanks so much. Yes, clear. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Davida has a question. Wasn't him being imprisoned for the good? If it wasn't imprisoned, we wouldn't have Tanya. Do we need to see our challenges as good, as well as humbled by it? So there's two separate things here. A very good question, Davida, but let's separate things. Of course, the Alter Rebbe knows that whatever is happening is by the hands of heaven, and he knows that it's all good. Absolutely. But it is still a decree. He knows that it is a decree from heaven. A decree from heaven because he was teaching very lofty teachings, and maybe the world wasn't ready for it. That was what the decree in heaven was. Is the world ready for his teachings or not? And, sort of like, a person who's ahead of their times. So, in the end, no. So, that's not the issue here about imprisonment. We're talking about the fact that he was released from prison. That humbled the Alter Rebbe. And he says that should humble all of us of God's kindnesses. He brought us closer to him through the kindnesses that he did, not by imprisoning, by being released from prison. Not that it wasn't, right? It wasn't that that's not a kindness, but that's not an open revealed kindness to be in prison. Here's an open revealed kindness that God has done. He's embracing you by taking you out of prison, right? So instead of feeling, vindicated, you guys are a bunch of losers, you guys are a bunch of no goods, you are just slanderous, you are this and you are that. Well, Ishmael. That's most of the world, by the way. I don't know too many people who would speak differently that, after being imprisoned, right, recognizing, being humbled by God's kindness is what he's done. And therefore, again, not talking about, speaking to those who are opponents, who don't like your form of Jewish, of worship. I'm talking about religious Jews, right? That were opponents to the way the Alter Rebbe was bringing divine worship to Jewish people. That's what we're talking about, right? I'm not talking about a Nazi here. I'm talking about a rabid anti-Semite. That's not our discussion over here. That's a little different. You don't have a connection to that person. The person is the embodiment of Klippa. We're talking about opponents who really believe that the Alter Rebbe was derailing Jews from the right path. You're wrong. They were confused, but they did it thinking they were saving Jewry, right? So that's we're talking about. Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other thoughts? Would there be the same if he wasn't in prison? Again, Davida, that's not our discussion over here. Absolutely. If there wasn't, everything's orchestrated from heaven. So let's separate the fact that the Alter Rebbe was in prison, and it was meant to be, and it was good because it was a greater good that came out of it, right? The second level of disseminating the Hasidic teachings, Tanya teachings, that came after his imprisonment. So absolutely, a greater good. It was a Yerida Tzarech Aliyah. It was a downfall in order to have a greater a descent, in order to have a greater ascent thereafter. So no question. But that's not the issue over here. Let's not confuse issues over here. The issue is, okay, now how do I deal with that? That now there's a greater ascent. There's been vindicated. So now what? So now I'm right. You're wrong, right? I was vindicated. And think about it. How often does it happen that you're in a discussion with someone or an argument about something, and then it comes out you're right. You were vindicated, and that person may said a slur or something to you. You're a fool. You don't know what you're talking about, right? Oh, I'm a fool. I'll prove you, right? And then you're right. You end up, you're right. Vindicated. Now I'm gonna, I'm the fool. What's the Alter Rebbe say? Bite your tongue. Can't you imagine? You vindicated. You're right, and you hold the peace and you don't say a thing. You don't need to prove anything. That's real self-esteem, because you know who you are. I don't need to be vindicated by you. I don't need you to even recognize it. Wow. That's a mensch. That's called a chassid, by the way. And honestly, folks, not too many of us really do that. We got to be honest with ourselves that that's really, when we feel vindicated, we feel self-righteous and a little full of ourselves. And the stronger the debate, the more we feel that. The more nasty the person was, the more vindicated and the more self-righteous we are. Imagine not responding in such a way. That's the take home. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Is everybody getting the power of the teachings? I hope.
If I may say something, Rabbi.
Go ahead, Vilma. Go ahead.
Well, it's always a pleasure to learn more about And I get the impression that, this humility comes from an inner peace, a sense of that his ego was nullified, that because when people fight, it's the ego that's fighting. It's the animal soul that wants to be right and prove the other wrong. But peace is far and above, and kindness, is far and above, and humility is far and above, more important than the desires of the animal soul.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes. Davida, what is the difference between the release of David HaMelech, whose challenges humbled him, but was continually surrounded by enemies who opposed him? Good question. I don't know. I'm not certain. Good question. Don't have an answer. Sorry. I have to think about it or look it up. I don't know. Asher, was the first epistle written before prison and the second after his release? Oh, yeah, thank you, Asher. There isn't a order here, a chronological order in the letters. Although the first epistle, definitely the first part of it was written before. The very last part, I'm not certain. I don't remember. Might not have been, because they were written in 3 different time periods, different times in the first letter. But again, it's not 1, 2, 3 in chronological order. It is in more, I don't know if thematic is the right word. So David, I'm sorry that I don't have an answer for you. We'll try. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'll get an answer even that quick. I'll try to. And any other questions, comments, thoughts? Powerful stuff. Wow. How lucky we are that the Alter Rebbe shares with us. And this, if you think about it, the decree in heaven is the world ready for these teachings. These teachings are teachings of Torah that are truth, but doesn't mean that everybody is capable of living the truth. And that was what the decree in heaven was. Is the world capable of living with this truth? So the final analysis is yes. And therefore, in the Alter Rebbe's kindness and heaven's allowance, we have the teachings that can really make a difference in our lives and really live with a greater truth. There's a real, not an easy thing. I mean, I just think for myself that, that when I feel right about something and I have an opposition to it and then vindicate it, not to feel my significance. Self-Veda, you got to work on yourself on that. It doesn't come for free, right? Feeling good about yourself comes for free. Feel vindicated and self-righteous, that comes for free. That comes natural. But to have this humility, it's very profound. And again, it's Aveda. It's work on ourselves. It doesn't come for free. Yeah, that's why we got to come every day to learn. By the way, that's an effort, to commit day in, day out, and then to take the teachings and put it into the Tanya journal. By the way, a reminder: TanyaRabbi.com, that you can get your own Tanya journal and to own the teachings. That's humbling also, but it brings you closer to truth by owning it, by jotting down, some people are, I know some people are very, dutiful and taking notes, and to to try to make it real for them. So again, take a moment because they're actually we had some kind of delay, but they're going out now. John is asking. Rabbi said, "I have become small." Assuming that the great humility already present to the Rebbe before prison, can we infer that the pursuit of humility and self-abnegation is really a daily pursuit? Very good, John. Yes, absolutely. Of course, the Alter Rebbe had humility before, but humility grows and becomes deeper because the closeness to God you become closer to God. Again, human condition is familiarity breeds contempt. The closer you get, the more you know, the more it breeds contempt. And not with God, and also not with real great, holy people, as the Rebbe, as Abraham and Jacob. But they're great, but in their own sense of self, they're not feeling that. Feeling the greatness of God. So likewise, I just want to bring, for us to feel the greatness of God, yes, to some whatever level, but also in human terms, to sense the greatness of the other, and you're okay. Usually we think, me, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, you're not so bad. Or maybe bad, whatever. But to feel the other's significance, and for me, my insignificance, my humility. Yeah, I got work. We all got work. We're all a work in progress. BIT's Bain Indian Training. Is it Miriam's birthday today? If it is Miriam, Mazel Tov. This forces the issue. When you have the book and you put it in front of you and you have a pen there, it'll force you to own it. And it'll be bringing you closer to the truth as a result. So, again, and it's extremely inexpensive. It's 20 Canadian dollars, 15 approximately US dollars. And that's just printing and shipping, basically. All right, folks. This has been a great journey, as always. Ain't no party like a working party. That's a good one. Okay, I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Don't forget Rabbi Mendy at noon, and then we have our Rambam, daily Rambam, which is an amazing thing. So many people come to learn at 12:45. Have a great day. Thank you for joining.